The Tampa Bay Lightning extend their win streak to 5. Can they reach 6 out in Los Angeles? We'll talk about all that and more coming up on Locked On Lightning.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Adam Danker. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Locked On Lightning. Before we get into all the news and recaps and previews surrounding the Tampa Bay Lightning, I just want to remind you that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200. If your bet wins, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. On this episode, we're recapping last night's win against the San Jose Sharks, a 4-1 win out in San Jose. The Lightning pick up their 5th straight win. We also talk about Nikita Kucherov, a fun kind of stat which I think also just ends the argument now with where he stands in the Norris Trophy. I mean, I'm sorry, not the Norris, the Hart Trophy. And then we wrap up things with our preview of this weekend's game against the Los Angeles Kings. But first, I just want to remind you that go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We're also available on YouTube. Go ahead, subscribe to our channel. Hit that thumbs up button there. So as you know, the podcast could grow, and it's all. And I mean, I just want to say, I always like to thank all of you, because without you, this podcast wouldn't have grown as big as it has been. And we're kind of nearing the end of the season, and it's just, you know, it always puts things in perspective. I think, especially the beginning, the midway, and the end of the season. It's all been because of you guys. So thank you very much. I very much appreciate it. So we're talking about last night's game against the San Jose Sharks. And this was a game, and if you listen to last night's episode, I stick by what I said, and I think for very good reason, as we saw for that game. This was a game I don't think I've ever been as confident about the Lightning winning a game this season as I was last night, because the Lightning have been on such a great winning streak. And it is great for those of you who might think that is a strong word, because you look at the track record over those last 4 wins coming into last night's game, all top teams, all Stanley Cup contenders, all teams that are just phenomenal measuring stick games, and the Lightning answered the bell in every single one of those games. This is a different Lightning team now than what we saw prior to the trade deadline. Some, and yours truly, will attribute that because of the arrival of Anthony Duclair and Matt Dumba, and that would be a right assumption and a right way to go about measuring what this team is now. But I think we could agree that it's that point in the season, and I've basically been dictating it, or not dictating, that's not the right word. I've been basically consistently telling you all how important it was for this Lightning team to get their act together as soon as possible, because, you know, once you find that winning formula, really everything you touch turns to gold. The puck starts bouncing in your favor. And that couldn't be more true than our first goal of the night last night. I believe it was Hedman sending the puck around the boards, takes a funky bounce, lands right in front of Paul, and he gets an easy goal in Mackenzie Blackwood. And I mean, what a better way to open up the game, especially when we did a segment on Nick Paul to end that episode last night. But it was just a game in which the Lightning, I think, really matched up well against this team, just because when we were doing our preview last night and we were talking about what the Sharks had to offer, and if you've been a listener of this podcast for even this season, when I preview games, I try to, even if it's a terrible team, I always try to find the positives about how certain players or certain things about that team can potentially hurt the Lightning or can present a challenge for the Lightning. And really, I didn't see that. I really didn't see that at all from this San Jose team. And I think I said it without saying it, that really, if the Lightning were going to be, if they were going to be unsuccessful in picking up that fifth straight win last night, it was going to be by their own undoing. But this team continues to find ways to win. I mean, really, the only blemish on this game was the Eklund goal, which came off a terrible turnover by Erik Cernak. I don't know what was going on coming out of the zone and going into the neutral zone. I don't know what that was. That was just, I don't know. I mean, Cernak's just been having a rough year. That's just really what it is. I mean, if you want to look at Cernak's season in really one play, it was that. But the rest of this team continued to play. I mean, Cernak still had a pretty solid game, but like I said, there wasn't really anything from this Sharks team that really scared me or really, in my mind, gave me the impression that the Lightning weren't going to be able to pull off a win. Except for, if William Eklund had some phenomenal scoring output, or Mikhail Granlund, or if we saw a phenomenal performance in net from Mackenzie Blackwood. But other than that, I mean, there was really nothing that stuck out to me. Maybe if Anthony Duclair was still on San Jose and not in a Lightning uniform, maybe this would have been a different story. But the Lightning scored in pretty much every way you could think of last night, or except for a shorthanded goal. But they scored from down low. They scored on a finesse goal from Anthony Duclair, which, I mean, I got to throw the man his props every single time he scores. He has been by far one of the best players on this team over the last 2 weeks. I mean, with not even a doubt in my mind. I mean, it would be absolute lunacy to even say otherwise. And then you have Braydon Point scoring 2 goals last night. He's picking up his 40th goal of the season in that last goal of the game, off a phenomenal pass from Nikita Kucherov, another guy that we can't talk about enough on this podcast as well. And on the other side of the ice, Andrei Vasilevskiy, phenomenal night in net. Didn't necessarily make any really highlight saves, but he made the saves when he needed to. He just went out there and did his job and took care of business. It looked like that the San Jose Sharks were kind of banking on trying to create a lot of traffic in front of him. They were really trying to do as much as they can to really get him all flustered, as we've seen in games past, especially this season, how that plan may work for Vasilevskiy, against Vasilevskiy. But just on the current streak that he's had, and that coupled with how this team has played, it was really not something that was going to help the San Jose Sharks. Also coupled with the fact that they don't really have a whole ton of scoring. So this was a game that was just really solidified how good this team is. Just because, as we all know, and what we have seen in the past, the Lightning are prone to kind of dropping the ball against these lower tier teams, but that wasn't the case last night. So a phenomenal win, regardless of what team it's against, as long as you play well. Like I always say, as long as you play well, you play the game the right way, you do everything the right way, you check off all of the boxes. A win is a win. The only thing I obviously had an issue with, and I'm sure some other people did, but then again, this was a very low shot game. Lightning only had 4 shots in the first period, 6 in the second, but turned it up in the third. The Sharks failed to reach double digits at all throughout the course of the game in any period. So I guess that's, it equals out each other. I would like to see in the next game coming up, and I'll talk about it at the end of the show, but I would really like, tomorrow night against LA, I would really like to see the Lightning really take an uptick in shots, or maybe that might be kind of counterproductive. We'll talk about that. We'll debate that. But coming up, we're going to talk about Nikita Kucherov. He's been on a phenomenal roll the month of March. We've already spoken about it here and there, but especially the last week or so, he has been tearing it up. And now he finds himself alone at the top of the points race against Nathan MacKinnon. It also looks like across the hockey world, he might be starting to separate himself from MacKinnon in the Hart Trophy conversation. We talk about that all coming up in just a little bit. But first, I want to talk about our first sponsor of the day, and that is our friends over at Indeed. Now, no matter how the last game went, anytime you take the field, you've got a shot at greatness. Give your team the best shot at winning by recruiting more MVPs with Indeed. If you're hiring, you need Indeed, because Indeed is the hiring partner where you could attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Indeed partners with you on every step of the hiring process. Find great talent through the time-saving tools like Indeed Instant Match assessments and virtual interviews. With Indeed Instant Match, as soon as you sponsor a post, you'll get a short list of quality candidates with resumes on Indeed that match your job description, and you could invite them to apply right away. Plus, you only have to pay for quality applications that meet your must-have requirements. I always talk about it. I had a friend that just started their own business about 4 or 5 months ago, and it grew huge over a course of 5 weeks. And he had to hire all these new people, and he didn't know where to get quality candidates from. And I suggested Indeed. He goes to Indeed, bam, he has 3-4 very qualified, very productive, very good people on in the span of a couple of days. And it's all in thanks to Indeed. So start hiring right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to update your job post at Indeed.com/lockedon. Offer valid through March 31st. Go to Indeed.com/lockedon to claim your $75 credit before March 31st. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. So as always, I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We're also available on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel there. Hit that notification button so as soon as the newest episode drops, you'll be notified. You'll be able to comment below this video. You'll be able to tell me how you felt about that game out in San Jose. You'll also be able to tell me how you feel about Nikita Kucherov. And you'll also be able to tell me, as well as other Lightning fans, do you think Nikita Kucherov has finally separated himself in the conversation for the Hart Trophy this year? Because I think, without trying to sound biased, which I'm sure anybody who's listening to this that is not a Lightning fan might get that impression, but I am strictly talking about this as a hockey fan. And I've been watching Nathan MacKinnon here and there when the games aren't at 10 o'clock Eastern time. But I've also been looking at the numbers. I've also been looking at how the Avalanche have been doing. But we had a great stat brought to my attention today. And this was by Lightning beat writer Deandra Lowe's. And it really, and if Deandra's listening to this, I mean, congratulations. You might have just single-handedly solidified the trophy for him, because I don't know how any other hockey pundit or hockey fan or even an Avalanche fan could really make a solid case for Nathan MacKinnon now. So Deandra tweeted out about midday today that the Lightning have scored 241 goals as a team so far this season. Kucherov currently has 122 points, meaning he has contributed to 50% of their scoring, which is just it's insane. It's absolutely insane to even think about that. That, you know, when you think about a player accumulating that many points in a season where they are 50% responsible for the amount of goals that their team has scored, whether it be through assist or scoring the goal themselves. I mean, first thing that comes to mind, and I'm not comparing the two, I'm just saying level of greatness, it's Wayne Gretzky. We all know the great one dropped 200 points like it was nothing. I don't think that Kuch is going to get to 200 points in the next couple of weeks, but crazier things have happened. I don't think that's going to happen, though. I mean, he's got about 78 points that he's got to score over the next couple of weeks. But with his last 4 games, I mean, on this trend, who knows? He might get pretty damn close to maybe, I don't know, I would say maybe 150, 155, because he scored 15 points in his last 4 games. He has back-to-back 4-point games. The guy has just, and on top of that, that pass that he made a point from his knees with 3 Sharks defenders around him with his back turned to the slot area where Point was just, I haven't seen that anywhere around the league today on social media, and that's just ridiculous. And I don't know if maybe they probably showed it on NHL Network this morning. I don't know. I wasn't able to watch. By the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go to On the Fly. Watch On the Fly on NHL Network. It's a phenomenal hockey show. I don't know how much more evidence we need to put forward until everyone is on the same page that 86 is just having an inhuman season. And I think a lot of it is because I'm trying to reason from the outside looking in. I'm trying not to be biased. The only reason I could think that people don't believe that this race is as separated as maybe you or I might think, because you look at them right now, the points standings. Kucher's got 122 points. McKinnon's got 117. McKinnon's got 42 goals. Kucher's got 41. But as we always say, when, you have to evaluate, this is for eventually the MVP, most valuable player. And what have I been saying the last couple of weeks, maybe even months? Where would this Lightning team be? And I even tweeted it out, retweeting DeAndre's tweet. Where would the Lightning be realistically if without Kucherov? You take away those 122 points. Where are the Tampa Bay Lightning? Because I don't think any other player on this team, not even Braydon Point, not even Brandon Hagel, not even Nick Paul, I don't think there's a player on this team that could step up to the plate right now and be able to put out that kind of performance where the Lightning would still be not only in the talk of the wild card right now, but possibly within arm's reach of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think realistically, if we're, let's be adults here and be honest with ourselves and say, without 86, Lightning are probably not in the playoff picture. Maybe the same could be said for Colorado. But I look out at the West and I don't know. I mean, who are they really in danger of being caught by? I mean, Colorado's at 93 points, tied for second place with Winnipeg, who's a hell of a team. You take McKinnon out of the out of the equation out there in Colorado, or you, like I said, you put a mediocre player. What are they, a point behind Nashville? After that, I mean, it's really a lot of a drop-off. You have St. Louis at 77, Minnesota, and then Arizona and Chicago being non-factors. Like I said, if any of your friends, if anybody who, when you're having that conversation, Cooch is, because I feel this way, and I feel like every Lightning fan should feel this way, and they should be able to say it and not be looked at in a biased way. And if someone says, well, you're just saying that Cooch should be the MVP because you're a Lightning fan, show them that tweet that Deandra put out. Because, like I said, there's no greater case for most valuable player than someone scoring 50% of the points that you have scored this year. So let me know in the comments below how you feel about that. I mean, it's really... I don't know how much longer we could talk about it, because the point has been made. I think the evidence is all there. I'm going to reach out to the guys at Locked On Avalanche, because I think I would love to get a live on-air reaction from both those gentlemen at some point discussing that. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to try and get those guys in around hopefully next week. So stick a pin in for that. And coming up, we're going to talk about the Los Angeles Kings. The Lightning have a rendezvous with them over the weekend, as well as one on Sunday with the Ducks. But we're talking only about the Kings, so stick around for that, but in just a little bit. But first, we're going to talk about our last sponsor of today's show, and that is our friends over at FanDuel. Now, say goodbye to busted brackets, because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney, whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed. It's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on points, spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. I picked Houston. I think they're a phenomenal team. For those of you who pick Kentucky, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry to hear it if you are a Kentucky person on the futures. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. So one last time, I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We're also available on YouTube, so subscribe to our channel there. Hit that notification button so as soon as the newest episode drops, you'll be notified, and you'll be able to watch this video. You'll be able to comment. You'll be able to throw a thumbs up to support the channel. And you'll be able to talk about Nikita Kucherov, because I'm laughing because it's just, that was the tweet of the year. I will say this right now to all my listeners. If Nikita Kucherov wins the MVP, I'm going to print out that tweet, and I'm going to hang it in a frame right behind me, and it's going to be right here as proof, as the final nail in the coffin for Nathan MacKinnon's chances to get in to win the Hart Trophy. And I already listed off all the things he did, Nikita Kucherov. And I would love to see him drop 4 points tomorrow night against the Los Angeles Kings, because I'm sure I've said this before. It's one thing to beat a bad team, but it feels so good to beat a good team. It really does. I just love, especially at this point in the season, playing playoff teams, whether or not the Lightning are playing bad or playing well. Because it's just, it just brings out that competitive edge. You got to just treat, I feel like those games are just, get the team jacked up so much more than what you would see. I mean, the Lightning were jacked up last night, but it was different than when you play Vegas or a New York or a Florida or a Philly. It's just a different animal. And tomorrow night, we're going to see a different animal because the Lightning are going to take on a very scrappy Kings team, a team that 36-22-11 out in the Western Conference, third spot in their division, 6-3-1 in their last 10 wins, coming up against Minnesota, Chicago twice, the Islanders, Ottawa, and the Devils. And that's very telling looking at that last 10 because you look at who they beat. Pretty much all those teams are not making the playoffs. And you look at the teams that they did lose to. They lost to Dallas twice, lost to Vancouver, both teams that are going to be in the playoffs. And then you throw a St. Louis in there, a team that, in my opinion, doesn't move the needle for me. And that tells you that this team is, even though the Lightning and them, they have pretty much identical records, pretty much identical points, give or take a point in a game, whatever. You see kind of the past and the present, or the ghost of the past and present of Lightning past. And what I mean by that is because you look at the Lightning, obviously we spoke about it in the beginning of this episode. They're in a better place now. I firmly believe the team that they are now is the team they're going to be for the rest of the season. And then you kind of look at the Kings. And I'll be truthful, I haven't really watched a whole ton of the Kings this year. But like I said, you look at the stats, you look at their players, and if you know enough about their players like I do, you kind of get a sense of where everyone's at and how the team's built and all that. And this team strikes me, especially when you judge them just based off of their last 10, it's very reminiscent of where the Lightning were about a month ago or even the beginning of March, beating very good teams, or let's say where the Lightning were in February. And it's very telling because it almost feels like, to a certain degree, the Lightning will be able to figure out certain trends just based off, because it's like, well, we've been there before, so we kind of know how to beat you guys and get out of this. So where these two teams stack, Lightning are obviously first in power play percentage. The Kings are 12th. The Lightning's PK is 8th, where the Kings are first. So that's going to be interesting to see the top power play go up against the top PK. These teams are almost identical in faceoff percentage. The Lightning are 10th, where the Kings are 14th. The Lightning are 6th in goals forced per game, whereas the Kings are 18th. And then goals allowed, the Lightning are 23rd, and the Kings are 3rd. So, a little bit of opposite ends of the spectrum there for both these teams. The matchup that I will look forward to tomorrow night is obviously Vasilevsky versus Talbot. Vazzy's 26-16-1. His goals against average is 2.91. And his save percentage is .899. Where Talbot, 21-16-6, 2.42, and a 916 save percentage. If you're going to ask me who I expect to have a big game out of this Lightning team, it's everybody. It's the usual suspects: Kuch, Point, Duclair, Paul, Cirelli, Hedman. I want him involved. I want to see Darren Radish throwing bodies around. I want to see Dumba throwing bodies around. As long as you give Vazzy enough space in front, he'll be fine. On the opposite end of that, Anze Kopitar, he's been around the league forever. This guy is like an absolute horse. I can't believe he's still around. He's producing the way he's producing. Quentin Byfield, that's going to be an interesting interesting matchup to see. A lot of people are still sleeping on him. I would say don't, because he's too young. He's too young. He's too talented. You don't get drafted second overall. And people just get to forget about you because you're struggling. I mean, guy was drafted second overall for a reason. And I still think he's a phenomenal player that's still coming into his own. And he's a big kid. He's a big kid that's going to give people problems tomorrow night. And I'm curious how the Lightning are going to have to play up against him. But the other players that obviously the Lightning should keep their eye on, Kevin Fiala, 23 goals, 62 points. Philip Deneau, you probably all remember him from when the Lightning played Canadiens in the Stanley Cup a couple years ago. The other player and last is Trevor Moore. Trevor Moore is having a phenomenal season as well. 25 goals, 48 points. So, you know what? You can't say that the Lightning, the Kings don't have any scoring. They do. They got 3 guys above 20 goals. Actually, they have 4 guys above 20 goals on the season. But they rely on their goaltending, and that's where the Lightning are going to have to hit them early on, disrupt the flow of the game, don't allow the Kings to get settled, and just continue doing what you're doing. So let me know in the comments below your predictions for tomorrow night. I am going to say 4-2 Lightning. 4-2 Lightning, 3-point night from Cooch. We get a goal from Cooch and Point. I'll say Anthony Cirelli scores. I would like to see him score more. That's probably why. And we got to see more shots on goal. You know, eventually this is going to come back and bite them in the butt. So what a better way to kind of fix that little issue than to do it tomorrow night. So we'll be back possibly over the weekend. Not sure yet. I got some stuff going on, but I'll tweet something out. So follow me on Twitter at DenkyDank, DENKYD8NK. Maybe I'll tweet something out. I'll probably, if anything, if we put an episode out this weekend, it'll probably be sometime Sunday. So keep an eye out for that. So in the meantime, that's been it for this episode of Locked On Lightning, part of Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I'll talk to you in the next one.